Hello and welcome to the West Ham Breakdown podcast with me, Callum Goodall, and my friend Darcy Cox. It's been a very hot weekend. How have you found it, Darcy?
Hot, very hot. It's been sweaty. I've had about a million jobs to do as well. Anyone watching will notice I'm in a different location. That's because I've moved the room that I'm in, and I decided to do that this weekend when it was really hot. Loads of gardening, cut the grass. So really bad timing from me. But
I quite like the sound of the gardening in the heat, I must admit. I feel like that is the sort of job you have to do when it's hot because in Britain, generally, it's not. You can't do it in the rain, so you got to... I saw a lot of people sort of like not mowing their lawn, but like trimming down the hedges out the front of their houses while I was out this weekend, sort of having a walk around. That seemed to be one of the popular tasks. I didn't really do anything productive. I visited several different beer gardens for several friends' birthdays, which was nice. And then went to Mangal One for dinner last night in Dalston. Anyone that hasn't been, best Turkish scran in London, I'd say. And that's not even a promo. I just love him. I love him that much. Sweet. Okay, so today, I suppose this is the final culmination of what we've been building to in the last three West Ham breakdowns, really. We've gone over and looked at sort of both Lopetegui and Potter, given our season review, given out our awards, looked at what went well, probably spent a bit more time on what didn't go well and tried to look at how we might change that going into the new season. We then looked at sort of what skills and profiles are missing from the Potter squad when we sort of built out squad weaknesses. I think it was a lot of ground coverage, a lot of high volume duelers. We'd like some carrying and a bit more pace. So we had a look at that. Then in the last episode, we reviewed the sort of loanees and returnees and whether they could feature as we move into this 2025-26 season. And now is the time for us to do our final review of the squad, player by player, every first team player. We're going to do keep, sell, loan, and I'm sure there'll probably be something else that we manage to wangle in there when we try and rationalise what someone should be doing. But generally, keep, sell, loan, every player with the ultimate end goal of identifying exactly where those gaps in the starting lineup are, where the squad sort of shortages are, which will, of course, then inform all of the stuff we do hereafter, really. So do stick around to the end of the podcast because we will have found out the gaps in our starting 11 and squad. And then we will be doing a lot of work on the Patreon, patreon.com/analyticsunited, to debate, scout, analyse who the best candidates are to fill each and every one of those squad holes. And the work has already begun, actually. Darcy, you did a fantastic video, your first target transfers video, looking at who could be West Ham's Carlos Baleba. And it isn't just the usual, here's a few players I like. It's it's hella nerdy. Let's be real.
There's a lot of numbers. I've tried to reduce the amount of nerdiness within it, but it's quite hard when you're doing something that's just driven by
when
data.
The base level
we've made our own app. It's very we've taken it very far, but I think it's worth watching as a result. So definitely sign up.
100%. We are very proud of it and the tools that we have built, and we hope that will give us a bit of a USP really this summer in terms of our content, because it should mean that we chuck in a few names that aren't popping up because it's data and metrics that are exclusive to Analytics United that we have built and tools that we have built that no one else has. So that should give us a bit of an edge, which is fun. So if ever there was a reason to sign up to the Patreon, that might be it, because I believe you covered 3 midfielders, Darcy, in that video.
Yeah. We looked at a wider pool and landed on basically 3 replacements for the defensive midfield position. I'm not going to name any of them. You've got to go and watch it, unfortunately.
Is that I consider myself to have a fairly wide breadth of players in my sort of remit that I know of. And I think generally it's me in AU that gets turned to be like, what do you think of this player? Yeah. 2 of the midfielders that got discussed in that video I'd never heard of. So that goes to show the depth of quality that we're going to with these tools. So that's really good. So yeah, I found it a really interesting watch actually. So please do go check that out. And as I say, there's going to be bloody loads of them as we get through this summer. But yeah, before we get stuck into it, I suppose it's fairly straightforward. 3 parts of the pod. We've got a few players to discuss in each one. Keep, sell, loan, as we said. I suppose the only caveat is that we are going to base it in realism. We're going to try and sort of be as realistic as possible and consider what actually is likely. I'm not just going to be like, I want to sell this guy for 100 million, because no one's paying 100 million for any of our players, quite frankly. So there will be an element of realism, but beyond that, it's kind of within our wheelhouse, really. So I guess the most obvious and easy place to start for me is the 4th category, I guess, which we would call the untouchables, who are not really worthy of discussion in this episode because we just know that they're nailed on. For me, I think there are 3 in my head as nailed on starters. Bowen, the obvious one.
Yep.
I think Kilman is also nailed on because we've laid out that amount of money. He's been probably our most reliable defender in a season where maybe defending wasn't as tip-top as it could be, but certainly improved on previous seasons. And then the 3rd one, I think, is Wan-Bissaka, because he's just won Hammer of the Year. We've massively increased his value. Sure, if someone came in and wanted to pay double, triple what we paid, I guess maybe you'd entertain it, but I think why would you move away from what he's been able to offer this season? He's so versatile and his game has developed to a level that we did not see coming, really. I didn't think he'd be such a positive in possession. And there's still a lot to come as well, one would hope. One would hope that he can continue to build on his assists and his final third contributions. So for me, they're the 3 nailed on untouchables that I don't think really need to be discussed in this. I would expect all 3 of them to be in the starting lineup next season. Any others that I've missed in the untouchable category before we start to get into the sort of nitty gritty?
Maybe like Wes Foderingham. Yeah.
Probably is, to be fair, because I don't think you shifted, do you?
Yeah. Genuinely might be because we need him for homegrown quota and things like that. But no, I think the first 2 100%. I'd say that there's a slight sliver of me that thinks, if you got a massive offer for Aaron Wan-Bissaka, which I think is unrealistic and just not going to happen, you probably would entertain it. Whereas for the other 2, I don't know if you would even consider it at all. Even if 100 million came in for Bowen, I just don't think the club would realistically consider that. Outside of that, I think any argument for a player to be untouchable is a little bit too tenuous. I think there's certain players in the squad that are like pressure points, because if they go, we have no one in their position, or the quality diminishes massively. But I don't think that alone makes them untouchable. So I'm thinking of like the left back situation, for example. Could end up being quite difficult, because if one is sort of nailed on to go, the other one kind of needs to stay. But that I don't think that qualifies for untouchable. So yeah, I think those 3 players probably the 3 that you said would be the shortest conversations anyway.
Fine, makes sense. Well, we'll come to the left backs later on, because I think that is one of the more interesting discussions, actually. Because I think there's, as you say, so many different avenues you can go down. Let's start topical, because news emerged today, actually. Well, the day of recording. It'll probably be the day after when you hear this, but we're recording on Monday evening, and there has, perhaps surprisingly for many, been links for Niclas Füllkrug and a move to Real Madrid, which, based on the season he's had, you would think, what in the world? However, we were discussing a few weeks ago, Jack and I, while he was away, about sort of what Madrid need to do this summer with Xabi Alonso. And one of the things we were fairly set on was that they probably could do with plan B, a focal point number 9, but someone that can come in and sort of play a facilitator role, back to goal, hold up, and bring in the likes of Vinny, bring in Bellingham, and all that good stuff. And I think when you zoom out and think of it like that, I think Füllkrug actually does kind of work. I can see it fitting. And obviously, Xabi Alonso has the benefit of having coached in the Bundesliga when Füllkrug was there, so he'll be very aware of his skill sets. So yeah, I actually kind of could see it. Do I think it will happen? Probably not. Would I entertain the departure of Niclas Füllkrug? Personally, yes, I would sell him if we have to. I think you can reduce the age of that player there, and you could spend the money that you get for Füllkrug on a bit more of a punt, but someone who has a lot higher upside. And I think if you don't sell now to Real Madrid, then the next opportunity to sell, the price is even lower, right? Because he's only getting older and probably not actually going to be banging on, firing on all cylinders, so to speak. So I guess for me, I would put Füllkrug in the sell category, but wouldn't be against keeping him around if no offers are forthcoming.
See, for me, I'm kind of the opposite of the spectrum, opposite end of the spectrum on Füllkrug.
Wow, me and Darcy disagreeing, guys. See, you heard it here first. You always tell us we're always in agreement. Well, now there's a moment.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, if we were able to recoup the fee that we paid for him, then I would be open to it. I just don't think that that's realistic at all. Because if Real Madrid were going to pay what we paid for him, why would they not spend that money on someone else who's younger and can stay at the club for a lot longer? The reason I think he's quite an important keep is because we have no recognised centre forward without him. I think it's looking more and more likely that Mikel Antonio is going to leave, and that puts us in a really tough spot. And it makes me think that we need the experience of Füllkrug, because even if you can add a younger striker to our pool of players, they're going to benefit from having and as a team we are going to benefit from having a more experienced guy in there, someone who's a little bit more reliable, doesn't need the time to sort of get used to the Premier League and get used to senior football. Even if we bring in someone that's played a lot of senior minutes, they're still a youngster, right? There's still development there. Whereas Füllkrug, even if he's not everything we want, he is the finished article in terms of what he is as a more physical target man type of player. Plus, he's technically very capable. So for me, he's quite a big keep, to be honest. Because I think if he goes, we now are in a position where we have to spend quite a lot of money at centre forward. You know, I'm not saying break our transfer fee record, but you're probably going to need to go and get at least 2 strikers, right? And I don't think you're going to be able to do that on the cheap. You know, you're going to at least have to put 30 million in. Is that really going to be worth it? I'm not sure, to be honest. So I see Füllkrug as actually quite important next year. Maybe if it was in January, things will look different, or maybe at the end of next season, things will look different. But at this point in time, where he is the only centre forward we have on the books, he has to be a keep for me.
I hear you. I think you might have convinced me. I also think as a level setter as well, right? Like a squad that's kind of looked a little bit spineless at times, and he's been the one that's been fairly outspoken about the level that he wants to play at personally, but also the level that he believes that the club should be able to play at. And I think after what has been such an incredibly disappointing and underwhelming season, keeping someone around that's going to set that level from the off, literally from day one of pre-season. And also, I think there's probably an element of we haven't really seen what he can do yet because of injuries and not really ever getting up to speed. So hopefully there's more to come from him as well. So to limit the work we do, I'm happy to move him into the keep category. That said, as you say, if Madrid say we'll give you 25 mil, then I'd probably just go all right. A few other contentious ones in this category before we break. I will go Kudus because obviously that is a hot topic at the minute. For me, that's a sell. I think he's our most valuable asset. There's interest, albeit not coming as quickly as we'd like it to be, or potentially at the value that we'd like it to be. However, whatever that fee is, it's still going to be more than we're able to get for any other player in the squad. And it might mean that you end up selling at a price that you would prefer not to sell at. But also, if the player doesn't want to be here, which everything suggests that he's not wanting to be here. He's had an off season where he's not really contributed anything. Partly his fault, partly our fault, I suppose, because of various things that go on behind the scenes, and we've probably not done a good job of managing his value, and we've allowed it to depreciate. But I just think, for all of those reasons, you just look to sell and move on and hope you can buy a sort of cheaper but equally effective option to come in and fill that squad berth and balance the squad out as well, right? Because I think we've got Kudus, who's on his day a world-class right winger, and Bowen, who's a world-class right winger. So you get rid of Kudus and you go and buy that level of talent in a position that enables Bowen to be his best.
Agreed. I agree with everything you said. I think the test has been run. We've tried using him elsewhere. He's not going to displace Bowen, nor do I think he should be given a chance to displace Bowen, because Bowen's proven more than his worth as the right winger. So why risk that at all? It's the prime opportunity to get a good fee for him, and the add-on effect of it is that the squad will become more balanced with the replacement if we go about it correctly. So yeah, I think he's on the sell list.
Perfect. Agreed. We'll put him there. Also, I think as well, like, yes, we're getting probably less than we would have hoped, but also we're still almost certainly going to make a profit. One would assume, which, okay, it's not as much profit as we'd have liked, or maybe we could have got if we sold him last summer, but profit is profit. It's good for the books. It allows us to buy other players that hopefully we can turn for a profit as well. Guido. I don't have much to say on Guido.
Easy sell. Yeah. Easy sell.
Picked him up for a free. Anything you can get is profit. Sure, you've probably been paying far too much in wages for a player that hasn't contributed at all. But if there's someone that's willing to take him and get those wages off your books, and you get 3 or 4 mil in the coffers, then yeah, flip it and go. Because he's not going to contribute next season if he didn't contribute this season. It's not like he's been injured. He's just been not chosen. And then finally in this section, another contentious one. I think we might actually both be agreed on this, but I'm going to let you have the floor first so I don't influence you. But Mavropanos.
Yeah, definite keep for me. Definite keep. Data is really strong this season, despite some of the sort of memorable errors. Particularly in the air, I think he's in the top 10% of Premier League centre backs for his aerial dual success rate. Something like that as well for his rate of interceptions per 92. So some really strong aspects to his defensive game. Big fan of his distribution in terms of playing specifically under Potter as well. Really good long passer, can sort of change the face of play quite quickly, whether he's a wide centre back or in the middle. Biggest thing I like about him, and the reason I think he's a definite keep, is the versatility. So he can play in the middle or on the right of a back three, and then if you're playing a back four but still want to have the benefits of a back three in possession, he can be your right back that tucks in as well. So I think very easy keep for me, despite the I think small but vocal contingent of West Ham fans that aren't his biggest fan.
Yeah, agree. Easy keep for me as well. I'd actually really quite like to see him get an extended run at that right-sided centre-back role. I think he's been kind of unlucky in the sense that we spent so much money on Todibo, who I actually think on form doesn't necessarily merit starting ahead of him. But because we paid that much money, you have to pick him ahead of him, because otherwise it's a wasted asset that's sat there. I hope that in pre-season at least we get to see all three of them, whether that's Kilman in the middle, one of Mavro or Todibo out on the left and the other one on the right, or whether it's Kilman out on the left with Mavro in the middle and Todibo on the right, or Mavro on the right and Todibo in the middle. I'd quite like to see if that three could actually just go from the off, because I think if you start again at square one and allow them all to sort of develop a partnership together, then we could actually limit a lot of the work we need to do, and we could probably go and buy younger, cheaper centre-backs with a view to toppling one of them in that sort of back line. Whereas I think if you are of the opinion that one of them's a backup, then you need to go and spend almost Max Kilman amounts of money again if you're going to play a back three, which I just would prefer not to do. But yeah, for me, just even if he isn't a starter, the perfect squad player, because you can kind of afford to go through the season with 4, 5-ish centre-backs, knowing that Mavro can cover all three of those centre-back positions if you want. So I think, makes a lot of sense for me. So at the minute, we're on Bowen, Kilman, Wan-Bissaka keep, Füllkrug keep, Mavro keep, Kudus, Guido sell. And we'll come back in the next section to discuss a couple of central midfielders, which will probably cause some debate, and also address the goalkeeping situation. So we'll see you in 2 secs. Okay, part 2. 5 more players. Well, 6 actually, because poor Wes, we mentioned him at the start, but he didn't even make my list in planning, which is ironic because he's a nailed-on keep for me, because he's a perfect third-choice goalie. He's homegrown, good character around the dressing room from what we've heard. Obviously been in the game a long time. So, yeah, he is a very, very obvious keep for me. And also, realistically, who's coming in and buying Wes Foderingham for any sort of fee that's worth entertaining? It just doesn't make any sense. Yeah. Which is probably why he missed out. However, We'll stick with the goalkeepers union, actually, before getting onto those central midfielders that I addressed. Areola, I suppose there is some debate around this one. Probably in a similar sort of realm as the Füllkrug conversation. I think it ultimately depends on who comes a knocking and whether it's worthwhile. But with Fabianski already out the door, you need to sign at least one goalkeeper. And if you let Areola go, then you got to bring in your starter and your backup in one window, which is something you'd probably rather not do, I assume.
Yeah, unless you've got a load of frees lined up, which I think would have already happened if we did. I think Areola has to stay personally. As much as he was a reason for some of the issues that we saw back into the season, it's just too much of a risk to sell him. Until you get another goalkeeper in at least, probably two, right? So yeah, I think for now, with how the sort of the transfer landscape is, it's quite an easy keep because we can't start Foderingham. I don't think. I've not seen that guy play football in 4 years. So maybe I'm wrong, and he's absolutely flying about like a cat on the training ground. But yeah, I think for now anyway, he is a keep. And if we bring someone in that's the obvious starter, then maybe you can start to consider that he could go. Although I still think you just keep him for another season, and then you can sort out backup later on.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree. I think it raises such an interesting question about what sort of profile of goalie you go for this summer as well, which, as we say, will inform a lot of the work we do on all of our transfer work throughout the summer. So another plug for the Patreon there. You know what to do. Go hit that up. Midfield. Actually, nah. It's time to discuss the boy. I don't know. He's almost the mascot of this podcast at this point. But yeah, Luis Guilherme, nailed on keep. Surely, no conversation.
Yeah, unless the big offer comes through. But we're, like you said at the top of the pod, we're trying to like base this in realistically based on what any club has seen of him this year, which isn't very much. They're not going to go and spend a load of money on him. They'd be trying to get him for probably a little bit less than we paid for him, and that I wouldn't be okay with. I think there's so much potential there. So yeah, I think it's a keep, and a keep rather than a loan, because I think that he has a lot to offer right now. It would maybe, if the plan is to not have him as an active part of the squad and involve him more than he was last year, then a loan makes sense. But he's definitely not on the sell list. I can debate between the other two. Not that I don't think you'll make me do that. I know you want to keep him. But,
no, there will be no loan offers entertained in this house. No, I just think it makes, firstly, what we've seen has all been very exciting. I also think if you're moving on Kudus, you can kind of just get away with not even necessarily replacing Kudus like for like, because Guilherme offers so much of what we thought Kudus would offer. And I dare say that Guilherme actually, in the moments that we saw him last season, offered more than Kudus. He did the ball carrying stuff better than Kudus. He was more secure in possession in terms of his decision making. He looked to be just more up for it in terms of getting involved, particularly when he drifts into central areas of the pitch. He was more combinative as well. Combinative. In terms of linking up around the box, whereas I think Kudus sometimes can be a bit of a one-track bully in terms of he gets the ball and he's like, right, I'm getting towards the goal or I'm shooting, and sort of head down, go forward. Whereas I think Guilherme, even in the limited amount of time he's had, has clearly built relationships on the pitch and sort of awareness of players' movements and stuff. So I think you can, take Kudus out of the picture. Guilherme then becomes the nailed-on backup to Bowen, but someone that can also play on the left and has played well on the left, whereas Kudus is kind of underwhelmed when he's not been on the right and underwhelmed in the 10, and we've seen what Guilherme can do. I mean, there was that game, I can't remember which one it was, but I remember him picking up the ball in the middle of the pitch in his own half, and he just ran through the centre of the pitch, and that is something that we lack so much. So I just think in terms of that profiling video we did a few weeks ago, if you guys haven't listened to that, do go back. It is on the YouTube channel, looking at sort of not what players we need, but what types of things we need to bring into the squad. Ball carrying, particularly in central areas, was a huge thing that we wanted to introduce. And in Guilherme, we've got someone who can do it, albeit less so from deeper areas, which is probably what we really need in terms of sixes, as discussed in that Baleba video. But yeah, just having someone with his skill set and pace, like he's so blisteringly quick, and we've not been blessed with pace for such a long time. So yeah, for me, a nailed on keep. I just don't really see why anyone would come in and pay more than what we paid for him, because he hasn't shown anything really outside of the few cameos that probably only we have seen, because it's fans that are in the stadium or watching it on telly that see those minutes, but he's not popping up in any highlight reels or anything like that. So yeah, keep Andy Irving. I'm sorry, brother. You kind of hold time. Yeah, you kind of hold a place in my heart like Guilherme, but just without the incredibly high ceiling. Apart from the ceilings in your house, because you are 6'4". But yeah, I think it's probably time to flip. And again, we'll still turn a profit, one would assume, because we didn't pay a lot. And I reckon you could get what, like 4?
I think his value's gone up a little bit. He just got his first, or maybe it's not his first call up, but he just got called up to the Scottish national team, didn't he? So I think it's probably the at least at West Ham, the apex of his price point.
Also for him as well, right? Like, strike while the iron's hot. Yep. You are in the national team setup now. You are in the mind of the manager. Now, take that moment to go and find a move where you're going to play every minute of every game, assuming you're fit, and then you make it so that you never leave the conversation, because now they can see that you're playing week in, week out, and you've made the squad by making a handful of Premier League minutes at West Ham. So yeah, it'll be sad, because I really like him and he seems like a pretty cool guy. But I think it's kind of more of a romantic thing for West Ham fans, isn't it? It's kind of like the myth of Andy Irving, but none of us have ever actually really seen it. But yeah, it's funny. All the links I've seen are like Championship or Scotland.
Yeah, but SPL. Yeah,
I would really just I don't know. I think I've always in my head, because of how unbelievably well he performed in Austria, I'm just like, surely some little German club could take a punt, just slap him in the midfield, big unit. But who knows? We'll see. I'm sure there's something to be done there. Everyone loves a tall, lengthy midfielder at the minute that's got a bit of tech on the ball. So his progressive stuff has always been pretty good. He's always been a pretty good passer. So yeah, someone will have him. Other two midfielders.
I think Charlie will just take him home.
Yeah. Maybe that's what we need to get. Yeah, Patreons need to chip in. I think for those of you that have watched us for a long time, you'll be familiar with the Robert De Niro cutout that Charlie has in his home somewhere. Maybe we need an Andy Irving one to go next to him, like some little and large combo of Charlie's dreams. So shouts for producer Charlie there. Speaking of big midfielders, Souček has to be a keep, doesn't it?
Yeah, he's one of the names that was bordering on being on the untouchables list for me.
Okay.
Not because he's such a great Potter player. He's just too much of a game breaker. He's just too good at very specific things. He's the perfect specialist for certain game states. I think he's just too much of an intelligent footballer for us to say we don't need him. I know his technical ability is not there, but he's just too versatile in terms of the roles he can play in midfield. He doesn't have to be a box crasher. It's just how we often see him used, but he can be like the deeper midfielder for a little bit if you need him to be. I guess as an 8, he struggles a little bit more because there's a lot more emphasis on what he can do technically then, but he can still play as like a 10 and link things up fairly reliably, whilst being a nuisance in the air as well. And maybe this is certainly not the most logical of my conclusions that I've given out on this podcast, but it's more just because I think at the minute, even more than Jarrod Bowen over the last couple of years, he is kind of Mr. West Ham, and it's not time for him to go yet. His time is not done. I think he's still got more to contribute, even if it's not as a starter, and I wouldn't campaign for him to be a starter next year at all, at least not under Potter. But I still think there's a lot of value to be added. And also, we cannot sell to another Premier League team. If we were to sell, cannot be to another Premier League team.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that's it. It's like he might not be... Like, his value might have depreciated in terms of inter-squad. Like, he was more valuable under Moyes than he was under Potter. However, he's so valuable to us because of how much value he could give to another team, especially like you say, like if for example Moyes wanted to take him to Everton, you just cannot sanction
Doesn't
that
matter
move
what they offer.
because we know what Moyes can do with Tomáš
He'll
Souček.
relegate us.
Yeah,
He will.
literally. And but if you look at some of the links that Everton have, that have been popping up for Everton. I mean, Tieno Barry looks like he's been linked, and that's like the premium Mikel Antonio that David Moyes always wanted at West Ham and never managed to get. And he's got Kenny Tete coming in that sort of senior right back Vladimir Sofali role. So if Moyes is getting backed at Everton with the new ownership group and the new stadium, which one would assume, given the form that he showed at Everton in the back end of the season since he took over, you would be throwing money at him to continue. If you then hand him Souček, that is crazy. So yeah, for me, I think bordering on untouchable, you're probably right. I think the only reason I wouldn't is because, as I say, I don't think he's in the starting 11. So I think you can't really be untouchable if you're not in the 11, because I think ultimately if Napoli come and say, we'll give you 30 mil and we want McTominay and Souček running it next season, then you just go, yeah, all right, that'll be fun. And it'd be no threat to us, but it would be a threat to every single Italian club. De Bruyne just ahead of them.
Oh my God, I didn't think about that.
Imagine?
That's genuinely game-breaking.
De Bruyne in the right half space just whipping back post balls into McTominay and Souček. Just game over. It's done.
They may as well play a DM at striker or something, because they've got enough box presence with them two.
That would actually be unbelievable. I don't want to sell Souček, but I kind of do want to see
Napoli
what
only
happens.
clause.
Yeah, that's it. And finally, the last of the sixes, Edson Álvarez. I will set my stall out and say I'm looking to sell Álvarez this summer. I think he's shown in glimpses that he could be useful in a Potter system if Potter finds or carves a very specific rollout for him. I think my issues are twofold. One of them is that alongside the likes of Kudus, he probably is someone that we could get a decent enough fee for. There are teams out there that could very much use what Edson Álvarez can bring, more so than we can, and therefore you would still be able to get a transfer done. The other one is that I think if you do carve out a role that is suited to Álvarez, you potentially run the risk of stitching up the other players in the midfield, because you're then having to balance it. And the whole issue throughout the season has been how imbalanced the West Ham midfield has been. I would rank that number one on the list of issues that have led to what the season has become, or became rather, was the lack of balance and the fact that we had to play a three-man midfield because we didn't have a two-man partnership that could actually do it. And then I think if you're looking forward and you want to try and get another attacker in the lineup and you want to reduce that to a two-man midfield that's reliable, Edson Álvarez cannot be a part of that, because it demands way too much of the partner, and the only teams that could afford to do that are top teams that can then go and spend the £100 million on the partner that you need to make Álvarez look good. So yeah, for me, it's a see what you can get, sell, because I think ultimately he's probably going to be on the bench for me, and I think he's too valuable of an asset, both in terms of wages and potential transfer fee, to be sat on the bench.
Yeah, I agree. I also just think the attitude is wrong as well. There's too many sort of rumblings of him throwing toys out the pram, things like that. I think it's fairly obvious that he, not that he thinks he's better than West Ham, but probably wants to be elsewhere, where he's maybe got a little bit more freedom to do on the ball stuff. I will say his on the ball work in the data this year has been decent enough, but it's kind of the opposite to what we want from him. So actually, when I was doing a lot of the work for the transfer targets video, his sort of progressive play is better than names like Andre at Wolves and better than Carlos Baleba at Brighton. But he's absolutely nowhere near them when it comes to the out of possession stuff, which is the big issue.
Particularly when we kind of thought that we were getting a destroyer first,
exactly,
and then a progressor second. Like, his carrying stuff at Ajax was lovely, but the reason we brought him in was because he was going to add a bit of steel to a midfield post Rice, and we just haven't really seen that. We've seen the carrying stuff on occasion when he's been given the license to do it, but that, to me, for that profile of destroyer that any double pivot needs, has to come first. It can't be secondary to progression, I think, because ultimately if you want a progressor, you just go and buy someone where that is such a standout of their game, where for him it's like he's good at it, but you could still go and find progressors that are better than him.
He exacerbates a lot of the midfield problems as well, right? Like his biggest issue is mobility. So it kind of the same applies to Guido, right? If they're going to exacerbate the issue without having key standout strengths outside of that, it's kind of hard to justify that he shouldn't be up for sale. I think he's played quite well in this international break or over the summer as well.
Yeah, they in the quarterfinals, are they? Mexico, I think I saw.
Yeah, so what better time to sell a player who's arguably, I don't want to say he's not very good, but hasn't played very well this season after they've just had a very good international tournament. It's always a great time historically to get an inflated fee, basically. So I think the timing is perfect. As much as I think you could make an argument that there's a player in there and he's worth keeping because he's one of the better ones out of the whole midfield sort of group. But yeah, I think this is probably the highest level of value we're going to get for him. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I agree. So that wraps part 2, and I believe we only sold 2. Yeah, Edson Álvarez and Andy Irving out. Areola, Tomáš Souček, Guilherme all stay.
Yep.
And part 3, 5 more players to discuss. 4 of them, I've just realised, are left-footed. So that's a nice little quirk. So, yeah, on the topic of left-footers, we'll be right back. Sweet. Third and final part. It's probably the most interesting part, I'm not going to lie, because I think there's genuinely a case for all 5 of these players, or there's a case that can be made for all 5 of these players to depart. I would not argue for that, because I think, frankly, that's just a lot of players to be going anyway. Let's start with Nayef Aguerd, because he hasn't actually been here. He hasn't been at the club, so that's probably the easiest departure to sanction, because he hasn't contributed for nigh on 2 years, really, because he wasn't particularly positive at the back end of his time at West Ham either. The flip side of that is that he has had a pretty good season at La Real in Spain. And he is also a left-footed centre-back that one would assume, based on his profile, good recovery pace, comfortable on the ball, left-footed, could play, or could at least feature as part of a 5 centre-back rotation in a back 3 system. That said, I think the theme throughout this has been in a squad where no one's value has been particularly appreciated this season because of how poor it's been. I think you really have to find the best market opportunities that we have to make money, and I think the fact that we were able to successfully loan Nayef Aguerd out, inflate his value, or at least protect his value, sell while the price is at its highest, I guess, for me, where we need to make a lot of money this summer to do a lot of work. As much as I think Aguerd could probably contribute, I think I'm just happy to be like, okay, well, he wasn't here. He doesn't really seem like he wants to be here, and there is interest. And frankly, there's not been a ton of interest in players for us. So I think the ones that there are interest in, you kind of just go to town and field offers.
Yeah, that makes sense. I personally want to keep him. I don't think it's realistic to keep him because of all the things that you said. He's one of our more valuable assets. He's also approaching. I think he's like 29 now. He's not. Yeah. He's not exactly young. But
in his prime, I suppose. It's the other way to look at it.
But there's not enough. There's not very much future value to be be got out of him, or resale value if we don't sell right now. And I think
this is his last big move, right?
Really. Exactly. But he does address a glaring weakness in the squad. We've just lost Cresswell, who in his last season, and he was playing this role of kind of a very composed, technically capable left-sided centre-back in a 3, right? And I think you could quite fairly describe Nayef Aguerd as all of those things, plus more physically dominant than Cresswell.
And about a foot taller.
yeah, exactly. and weirdly similar hair for people of completely different races. But yeah, so it kind of makes me want to keep him because I'm like, well, now you don't have to go out and buy a left centre back because you already, we've got dinner at home. We're not going to McDonald's drive-through. That's the vibe, But I think I am convinced by the points that you made. I think really it depends on the fee. Like, if someone's going to come and take Nayef Aguerd off us for 10, 15 million, I don't really fancy that.
Yeah. It needs to be 20-ish plus for me.
Yeah, you have to feel like you've got a very good deal for a 29-year-old. And if we get that, I guess, fine, let's sell him. But if the plan is to play a back three, I just think he fits it too well.
Yeah, no, I hear you with that. I think my reasoning behind the argument was just based on what we said at the top. It's like that element of realism, and I just think, I don't want to have another Mohammed Kudus situation where, presumably based on the levels of performance that he's put in over the course of the season, he probably wouldn't have minded being sold at the end of last season when his value was high and felt like he could be a Champions League player. I don't want another situation where you keep someone who thinks they're of Champions League caliber and then they just don't really put any effort in throughout the course of the season and then you sell for a fraction of the cost. I kind of have been burnt by that, and now I'm kind of thinking, okay, Aguerd's played not at Kudus levels in that first spell for us when he was being linked to like £85 million Arsenal rumours, but he's certainly played at a level that should convince a handful of Champions League clubs to take a punt on him if they've got the right system for him, and therefore I think that's where I'm at. It's just it's a shame, but also who are we to hold on to a Champions League caliber centre back realistically? I think it's the price you pay for having such a shit season, basically. I think that's the only way to put it. It's like, you got to try and convince a lad that's been playing European football all season and was at one point linked to Real Madrid on the basis of his form that he should in fact instead stay and play for the team that finished just a few points above the relegation zone. It's a difficult sell. So yeah, I think he's probably on the sell list for me. But as you say, depending on the price, you would, and if he's happy to, then you'd keep him around. Paquetá, I suppose, is a bit of a quick one, just because I think so much of it depends on this court case, and therefore there's probably not much we can actually do in terms of a discussion on him. What I would say is, if he's found to be not guilty, then I think I would. It is a tricky one because I think he could do such a good job in that left 10 role at the tip of the box. But again, it's another one. It's like, I just don't like the fact that so much of the reporting has been, well, if he's not guilty, then we're going to sell him to City or we're going to sell him to blah, blah, blah. It's kind of another one of those situations where we've got who is undoubtedly a Champions League level player when he's playing at like full capacity. And I'm just wondering, does he really want to stick around if he's told that he's allowed to play in Europe still?
Yeah, it makes sense. He's a keep for me. If found, well, obviously circumstances pending. But I wouldn't be looking to sell him, particularly if we're able to make a sale for Aguerd, we're able to make a sale for Kudus. I don't necessarily see the need to sell. And I
suppose
think
the fee you'd have to pay to replace or to fill that left 10 role is quite substantial to get someone that can play at the level of Lucas Paquetá.
Yeah, like really, you're probably going to have to reinvest quite a lot of money to go and get like let me pull a name, Bilal El Khanous. I don't know.
Nice.
That's my
Nice.
like for Paquetá. Maybe not like for like. I actually think El Khanous is a little bit more
Ismail
creative.
Saibari in there, but I think he'll go somewhere better.
Yeah. But yeah, I'm not sure that the value is really there with Paquetá anymore, because as much as this court case has been hanging over his head, what's he done that gets us this fee that we paid for him, or even less than that? That gets us 40 million. Because the goal output or the goal creation output is certainly not there. So I'm not sure you're going to get very much for him. And I think what he does for us is, well, we just don't have it anywhere else in the squad. and if Kudus were to go, and that left wing spot becomes a straight fight, basically between like him and Somerville, for example, I think we've got such good balance in the team from there.
You've got Bowen and Guilherme on the right,
yeah,
with Somerville and Paquetá fighting out for the left 10 spot, and then Georgetti, who can probably play in both and pick up minutes around the squad. So that's your 5 attacking midfielders for 2 places sorted, and several of them could play elsewhere. Paquetá could play in the midfield pivot in the right games. Bowen could play up front in the right games. Guilherme can play in both 10 slots. He can play in both 10 spots. So I think for me, ultimately, it depends. I agree that I don't think we'll probably get what we want for him. And then it's like, well, I don't want to sell him then. But it's another one of those situations where I'm like, is the reason that all the reporting is saying that if he's found not guilty, he'll go to Manchester City? Is that because that's what he wants? And if that's the case, I think basically it will ultimately come down to what Potter thinks in terms of, not of his level of quality, because I think if he wants to stay, I think the level that he performs at next season, I would be willing to, not bet because this isn't the gambling podcast, but I would assume that the level of performance ticks up when he doesn't have this huge grey cloud hanging over his head. And the idea of a galvanised Lucas Paquetá with a fan base that have done nothing but support him and stick up for him, and a manager who has gone out to protect him in the media in spite of only knowing him a very short amount of time. If you can guarantee that Paquetá is bought into the project and wants to be essentially the poster boy bar Bowen to deliver that, then I'm all in. But my question mark is whether that is the reality. And if it isn't, then I probably do listen if there is interest. But I do agree. I think you potentially bite off a lot more than you can chew by letting him go and then going, shit, how do we replace that? Without just taking a gamble on a very young, high upside but high risk sort of 10 profile, winger profile, wing fielder, whatever you want to call it. So it's very difficult. The next 2 players I will do in conjunction because I think they inform the decision of one another. I will give this one to you because I know that you have some opinions about it, but what I will say is that there have been links today between Emerson and Lazio, not for the first time, but the reported fee that they've been made aware of is 10 million euros to get Emerson. And I wonder if that informs your decision-making process at all.
Yeah, that's a very fair fee for Emerson, I think, based on the value that we've got out of him. I think in an ideal world, it would be a very good point, a very good jumping off point with regards to Emerson. Really big wages, has served the club well. It's starting. We're sort of starting to see a drop off. Let's say, and that's not in errors or mistakes. It's just in what he's able to do, sort of going forward and on the ball. He's been fine and reliable all season. The only reason that I would consider not having him on the sell list is because we already need a wing back for the right side, and so we're essentially just exacerbating the issue even more by selling him. If we're considering selling him, I'm sure that there has to be replacements lined up already. Otherwise, it's a little bit nonsensical. Because we're getting so thin at fullback or wing back, so we'd be left with Aaron Wan-Bissaka and someone that I'm sure we'll move on to talk about, Ollie Scarles as well, and I think that's it. There's a lot to do in the transfer window, and throughout this whole process, I think one thing I'm very mindful of, is trying not to create more work on top of the mountain of work that the club already has to do in the transfer window. But if that 10 million offer were to be met, I think that's more than fair, and probably the best that we're going to get. And we kind of need to consider that kind of thing because we need to reinvest it. So I tentatively, he's on the sell list, but I think it does create headaches by selling him. Yeah,
no, I hear you. Fair to assume then, regardless, because if Emerson stays, I assume, based on the fact that you're concerned about any potential work that needs to be done at left wing back, and the reason to keep Emerson would be to limit that, is that Ollie Scarles stays, irrespective as the backup left wing back. Cool.
Has to, yeah.
I didn't know if there would be a loan shout for him, but I think based on what you've said, because you loan out Scarles and then you've got to go and buy a left wing back to either start ahead of Emerson, which then blocks Scarles' path when he comes back from what would hopefully be a successful loan, or you buy a left back who's backup to Emerson, and again, it's the same issue. It's still going to be someone who probably starts ahead of Scarles, even if they're a backup to Emerson with a view to eventually becoming a starter. So yeah, it's a difficult one. I think you keep him around and you either sell Emerson if the offer's right and you just buy someone that does start ahead of Scarles and you hope that the two of them can fight it out in the same way that Scarles and Emerson would scrap it out. But yeah, I think we're both agreed then that because of the amount of work that needs to be done, Scarles has to stay, really.
Yeah, ideal world, I think you loan out Scarles, but we just can't. Because we have no... Our first choice left back will be our first choice right back. So, we're putting ourselves in a bit of a pickle. But yeah. I in an ideal world, I would loan Scarles out. But we do not live in an ideal world, so he will be staying.
Yeah, I agree. I did see that we'd been scouting El Hadji Malik Diouf, is it? Or Malik El Hadji Diouf, the left wing back, who I think for me, and again, I don't want to go too much into the left wing back slots, but I'm sure it's a position that we will cover, whether we think we need someone or not. I've got him number one on my list of wing back profiles for this system. So
yeah, look good against
England. As you say, if we're entertaining offers for Emerson, one would assume that we have players in the pipeline, and I hope that he is one of them. So Emerson, for me, I know you've said keep to limit it, but if the €10 million fee is true and Lazio want to pay that, then I'm selling. And I can believe it as well, because Maurizio Sarri's just gone back to Lazio, right? And I'm pretty sure they already have a working relationship. I don't know if there was a crossover when he was at Chelsea or not. I can't remember what the timelines were. But just by being in and around the Italy setup, the Serie A circuit, I'm sure they've crossed paths at some point. So I can see that. Aging Italian left-back leaves to go and play in the lowest league in Europe for a manager that he potentially has a relationship with. And frankly, even if you don't, who wouldn't want to play for Sarri? I would absolutely love to play for Maurizio Sarri. Plays great football, smokes bear ciggies. What's not to love?
Changing room vibes.
Sorry, no, smoking is bad. Final player.
Italian.
Yeah, unless you're Italian. Final player, James Ward-Prowse. I think keep.
Yeah.
Again, similar one. I don't know who's paying what we would have needed to get back to make it worth our while, because we paid a lot anyway. We sort of did that. We sort of did what any club who buys Nayef Aguerd will be doing, in that you just, and kind of like what we did with Füllkrug, right? We kind of just accepted that it's unlikely that we're ever going to get resale value from them because we're buying them in their prime to come in and have an impact now. In that respect, all three of them maybe could be seen as failures because none of them have come in and actually broke into the starting 11 properly or convincingly. But for that reason, given that there's no resale value and that Ward-Prowse is, if nothing else, a dead ball specialist, a consummate professional, and someone that can contribute in this system, whether you want him to start or not, I think for those three reasons, it's just a nailed-on keep, really. As you say, limit the work, lead by example, be a senior head to help the younger players that we're inevitably going to bring in out, because we're going to try and reduce that age. And therefore, I think, he becomes a bit of a mentor, if not a starter. And a captain, I suppose. Whether that's with an armband around him or just sort of an on-the-pitch vocal captain.
I was going to say leadership's a very big thing, I think, that you get specifically from him. And I think the only way you can get anything near... I mean, we paid 30 million for him.
Yeah.
There's no way
no
we're
one's paying that, bro.
But even like 15 million, you have to like hoodwink Wrexham or something. It's the only thing I can think of. Someone that's not locked into what's going on. He'd go play really well in the Championship. I kind of like that idea.
Throw him at Shea Chart. Just go to Southampton and be like, guys, you want this guy back. He's going to bring...
such a good idea.
Chuck us Shea.
I didn't think about that.
Give us Shea and we'll give you your king back. And he can help guide you to the promised land.
Yeah.
And that way you probably do get some value, because if it reduces the price and it just actually ends up being a chip in a bigger deal, then maybe you'd entertain that, because you bring this...
But it's a keep.
Exactly.
It is a keep. Yeah.
So, keep Ward-Prowse, keep Paquetá. sell Aguerd, although you're not convinced, but I'm calling the shots as the host. Sell Emerson to the Siggy Smoking Sarri Nation and keep Ollie Scarles.
Yeah.
Which, if I've been doing my mental plotting correctly, means that the holes are at goalkeeper, whether that's a starter ahead of Areola or whether it's a younger keeper that probably can push Areola to back up throughout the course of the season. At least one new centre-back, ideally left-footed. Probably two if we let Aguerd go, because you still need a backup and a starter, frankly. Unless there's someone in the youth academy that you're happy to take a punt on being fifth choice while they play for the under-21s and come in if needed. Someone like Golan Bekis. Casey as well, but I think we agreed on the previous episode that we'd like to see Casey go out on loan. Two new defensive midfielders, probably both starters, to be honest, with Souček and Ward-Prowse being contributors in certain games when the game state's correct. A new left wing back if we sanction the move of Emerson for 10 million euros. I think we're all good in attacking midfield because we decided we're going to keep Paquetá, but if he does go for a fee that we consider reasonable, then we would look for a replacement to compete with Somerville, and then a new striker to battle it out with Füllkrug, depending on his fitness, and a new right wing back, which is a very long-winded way to say there's shitloads of work to be done, both for Analytics United and for West Ham United. So stick around, because it's going to be a busy, busy summer. And I, for one, I'm looking forward to it. I mean, we've mentioned a few names in the pod. Ismail Saibari, El Hadji Malik Juf, I think it is El Hadji Malik Juf.
Yeah, it is. It's El Hadji Malik Juf.
There you go. A few names that I'm sure a few of you won't be especially familiar with, and as we said in that Carlos Baleba video, two of the midfielders I hadn't even heard of, and it's kind of my job to hear of these midfielders. So Darcy's cooking up some madness at the Patreon kitchen. So get over there, sign up, patreon.com/Analytics United. If you're still here, thank you. We will be doing extra time, and we're going to be ranking every West Ham transfer window since 2016, is it?
Summer transfer window since we moved to the London Stadium.
Okay.
We've evaluated what we need this summer. Now, historically, how good are West Ham in the summer?
I think it's going to be a couple Fs. Sweet. Well, that should be enough to whet the appetite. So, thanks everyone for listening. I think Jack's going to be back soon as well. So that's a nice little treat. The first summer transfer. We released him for a bit and we're bringing him back. We sent him out on loan to the Pyrenees and he's been digging up trees, literally tearing up trees in the Pyrenees. That is genuinely what he's been doing physically with his hands. But as a metaphor, it's also great for a bit of transfer business. So we'll wrap it there. Thanks, everyone. Adios.